Hello and welcome to part 0 of my AML tutorial. This tutorial is going to be mainly focused for players that are interested in learning Glover, the speedrun, or just anybody who wants to pick up the game, try it out. Part 0 is going to be very useful because it's all movement related, and movement is a huge part of this game, and especially the speedrun. A lot of what I see people struggling with when they first pick up this game is not having a firm grasp on the controls and how they operate. So this beginning part, before we go over any of the levels, is mainly going to be discussing how the controls work so you can be better suited to how to properly use the controller. So to start off, you're just as Glover alone. If you've seen much of this game before, you'll know that there are times where you're moving around a ball, and that is the majority of the gameplay, but it's very important to understand how you should be moving without the ball too, as just Glover. To start, A button is your jump. Very standard placement for the jump button. Press it twice, you'll double jump. There's not much more to this, but you can short hop if you tap the button really fast. And you can also do bigger hops. And of course you can do small hops and then a double jump. Your C buttons are going to adjust your camera. Left moves it that way, right moves it the other way. Down will change how close it is to you. And up will put you into a kind of first-ish person perspective, but it's still third person. You don't have access to the left and right C buttons when you do this, but almost any button, most action buttons besides your movement will bring you out of it. So when it comes to moving Glover and just movement in general in this game, a lot of people would assume we're going to move around with the analog stick, you know, like most other N64 games. Though Glover is a bit of an exception. You can't reach the maximum movement by using the joystick. So you actually use the D-pad to reach all the maximum movement potential. It seems a bit wonky at first, but if you play the game and really do try playing it without using the analog stick, you'll realize that it's definitely a lot more simple, especially with the layout of all the controls in general. Something to note that's also a lot easier to do, in my opinion, on the D-pad is diagonal walking. So you can walk normally, and you can also walk at a diagonal pretty simply. Diagonal walking is actually the fastest movement in the game for Glover without the ball. So whenever you're walking around as Glover, you're going to want to be walking diagonally and using the camera to kind of keep your walking straight, as shown here. Now I am trying to go in a circle, but if you want to go in a straight line, you just have to pulse it a little bit faster. That's going to be the fastest way you can move around without the ball. It may take a little bit to get used to this whole control scheme with just this movement in general, but if you give it a little bit, I can guarantee you it'll feel a lot more comfortable once you add in all the other controls. Now to go over what else we have, the L button as Glover alone does absolutely nothing, and the R button just kind of makes this okay sign. When you're in easy mode, which is how you'll do all runs, holding R will actually point at Garubs when you're in a level to the closest one. This is not useful simply because we won't be collecting Garubs in AML. And of course, the obvious button that I did not point out yet is B. Holding B, you will point at the ball. Going close to the ball and pressing B, well, pretty close to the ball, you'll grab it. Oh, I don't want the ball yet. And if you're any distance from the ball and you're holding B, tap R, and you can send your magic over to change it. This can be pretty useful in very specific situations. Before we go into ball movement, there is of course the Z button. It lets you crouch and move around on the ground. If you're in the air, you'll do a fist slam, and if you double tap it, you'll cartwheel roll. When using the controller in the configuration where you're grabbing the left and right side and you're not using the middle one, you may think, how the hell am I going to reach the Z button? It is definitely something that takes a bit to get used to. I personally use my left middle finger to tap it, but if you have smaller hands, it may be more difficult to get comfortable with that. I would say find some way that works for you, but you will need to use the Z button in a lot of situations, so it is very good to get comfortable with being able to reach it without holding the center prong on the N64 controller. Now that's all the basic movement with Glover, but he gets a whole new set of movement once we grab the ball. So to start off, you no longer can really jump with A. Tapping A is actually going to toss the ball straight up. If you hold A, you'll go into this spot where you can actually slap the ball. So it is a bit finicky sometimes. I've tried to like slap it before and I just kind of throw it up. It's something just to get used to, just holding it. You can hold it for a little bit and slap it immediately. But A no longer works as your jump. Instead, you have B, which is a dribble. You basically just bounce the ball. If you tap B rhythmically, you can actually continue to bounce it and move around while bouncing it. If you hold B, you'll grab the ball in the air or on the ground and just kind of float there. You release B, you'll throw the ball. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't release B and I let go of the ball. If you're in any of the holding states, whether it be holding like this because you want to throw it, or, oh, not like that. Or if you're just holding it on the ground with A, if you tap Z, you'll stop that animation and you'll just go back to grabbing the ball. So you can be in the air, be holding it, press Z, drop, keep moving. Also, if you're just on the ground and you press Z again, you'll detach from the ball. Okay. Another thing to note is you can actually kind of combo these. So a technique called a BZA, it's kind of what it sounds like. If you hold B, and this will usually be done in the air to get extra height, you tap Z and then press A, you can throw the ball straight up. This is very useful because normally when you're in the air and you press A, when you'll just slap the ball, and that doesn't really give you a lot of height. So you actually get a lot of height by being able to do a BZA. At first, it may take a little bit to get used to, but it's not even a tight window, so you should be able to figure it out pretty fast. The L button is going to toggle you from being on the ground grabbing the ball and riding on top of the ball. While on top of the ball, you move a lot faster in this game. Specifically, when you hit diagonals, you can see like you start going pretty fast. And the more you mash the L button, you can actually gain a lot of speed. So that's what you'll see a lot in the run, is a lot of mashing the L button to go really fast. It is good to note that in easy mode, your controls are not reversed. So forward is going to be forward when you're on top of the ball. So forward, backward, left, right. If you're in normal mode, it will be reversed. It makes playing this game in normal mode very difficult if you want to L cancel, because your controls are going to be constantly swapping back and forth when you try to L cancel like that. So the next thing to look at is, of course, you can be holding the ball. Tapping R is going to change it into the different forms. You have the rubber ball, which is what you'll use the most. The bowling ball, which is kind of like a stronger ball, but it's pretty slow and heavy. The marble, which is probably the second most useful. And then you have the crystal. The crystal's useless. We are not going to use it very much in the run, besides maybe if you need some extra lives, you can use it for collecting things and getting double points. But crystal's very fragile. You never really want to have it out. It's more safe to have the rubber ball or the metal most of the time. There is, of course, some additional moves that you can do. If you're standing on top of the ball and you press A, you can actually fist slam. You can go pretty high. It's not used too much in the run, but it is something to note that is possible to do. So I'd recommend trying to play around with the controls as much as possible and getting used to them before really trying any of the levels fast, because they can be kind of difficult if you keep on having to switch between the two control styles basically, and you don't know what's going on.